What's up, family, and happy Sunday. This would be our 16th consecutive week, or somewhat consecutive, 15th consecutive week of going with our Sunday sessions. But today we needed to take a break, and I'll tell you why. On Thursday, our air conditioner was obliterated, for lack of better words. Not necessarily obliterated. I'm being a little hyperbolic here, a little exaggerating, but there's been storms in the Alabama area lately for that have been raging kind of wild, and apparently either Wednesday or Thursday, lightning must have struck our unit, and so we have been without AC since Thursday, and it doesn't look like it'll actually be getting fixed until Tuesday. Now, what that means is our house, while is fairly well insulated, has been losing um, air or cool air since Thursday, and so it's gotten hotter as the day has gone by. As the days have gone by, we've tried to regulate it as best as we can, but sincerely thinking about this, sitting in front of the camera under the lights in a house with no AC for about an hour and 30 minutes. Oi, it just doesn't seem to be a very wise idea, especially in the state of Alabama. And we typically run at 12 noon. In the old days, they used to call that high noon. So, which means the sun is up and will be beaming over the house. So it will be uncomfortably hot to be sitting in front of a camera, under a mic, in front of a computer, and all. I did my overs and unders backwards, but you get what I'm saying. Um, but yeah, so I did want to drop in and do a video anyway, just kind of pre-record something so that everybody knew, so that nobody's wondering. And I do want to use this as a shameless plug opportunity to highlight this volunteer role that we've been talking about lately, campus executive. Now, the campus executive is a driver level role. For those of you who've already kind of perused the levels of commitment you can kind of take on in the community from a volunteer perspective. You can do supporter level, which is 5 hours or less a week, member level, which goes up by an additional 5 hours, promoter level goes up by additional 5 hours. And then we have organizer and driver levels. And those are really between 20 hours a week and more, ideally, not really, but it's not even the time commitment at the organizer and the driver levels. It's you have to be able to do this without limited. You have to be able to do this without a need for training. I think one of the things that I've tried to be somewhat unapologetically clear about is that I really don't have the bandwidth to do much more than I'm doing already, because I am, as I stated, hyper productive. So I do have quite a few things on my plate, but community is very important to me. However, one of the things that I am fiercely resistant to doing is building a community around a cult of personality. So I don't want a community that becomes dependent on me or my wife to always be the ones engaging and interacting. That becomes draining on our side and is really an unhealthy attachment on the other side. So what we're really looking for in community is being very intentional about finding people who are just as passionate about the idea of secular community, or community without, or community beyond superstition, rather. Finding people who are just as passionate about that and who are willing to put their time where the mouth is, right? And it is fairly easy if you have the time. And so that campus executive role, which again is a driver level role, so um, that's a role that I expect whoever we select for that role, which there'll be multiple roles for the campus executives, but whoever we put in those or accept in those type of roles need to be people who bring vision to the roles, who bring ideas to the roles, because that's what passion does, and that's a whole nother other conversation. But it is something that I sometimes help people do. because a lot of people say they're passionate about things that they're really not passionate about. And maybe they want to be passionate about those things, but they've lived in a paradigm where it was acceptable to talk the talk without walking the walk. And what you will realize that what that eventually does to you is the things that you claim are important to you, you never will actually put the action behind those things to actualize them as important. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I didn't mean to do a little lecture here, but that is one of the many areas that I do try to help people with, because it's actually not because I try to pick at people or anything like that. I'm not trying to say, oh, you said you're passionate and look, you're really not. No, it's actually the other side. Can you imagine being a person who's passionate about something for 20, 30, 40 years, and then you never put any time towards that? You've wasted your own passion. And so I typically like to call that hypocrisy out, not as a way to shame a person, but as a way to highlight to that person that no, you still have the opportunity to impact this. So for example, you if you spend a week with me, you will unlikely know quite a few things that I'm passionate about. Unlikely. I mean, likely rather. You will likely know several things that I'm passionate about. You spend just a few days with me, you'll find out real quick. Okay, he's passionate about singing because this dude is singing all the time, just some random tune, whether it's R&B show tunes, game music, game show music. I love music. You will also see that, man, he really enjoys writing. you know you will also see that, dang, this dude is really passionate about community. You'll have to observe some of my writings to see that, and see the work that I'm committed to outside of YouTube is a platform to talk about the work. It's a platform to share the ideas of the work, but YouTube is not really where I do the work. YouTube is where I give you insight into me, and give you insight into and my wife gives you insight into her, and we try to give you insight into the things that are important to us and the things that we have organized ourselves around you know but the big point here is that times like these, having a campus executive would be absolutely amazing, because then we could have reached out to one of our campus executives and said, hey, there's no way we're going to be able to comfortably record tomorrow. And of course, we have a house of 4 kids to attend to who will also not be comfortable. And typically, when we're recording, even though I tell them they don't have to, I am really big on, this is our house. It's not necessarily our place of work, even though we do work here. My wife and I both work from home. So even though we do work here, I really try to stay very clear that, hey, this is your house. Nothing I'm doing changes that, you know. And I know a lot of people have like all types of YouTube things like, oh, you shouldn't have too many distractions in your in the background. Number one, like I do want to say, and I know people will disagree with me, but that is 100% outdated advice. If this was true, people wouldn't be able to pay attention to any television show in the history of television shows, because all television shows have background movement. There is no television show where the director says, hey, everybody except for the main people stop moving, or to be distracting to the audience. You have no idea how much bad advice makes it into the secular community for the same reason it makes it into the superstitious communities, because we don't verify information. Somebody says something, enough people say it, oh, it must be true. But here's the thing: if we're thinking from a scientific vantage point, then shouldn't we verify before we just accept something as true? Like, one of the things that aggravates me about people, and doesn't aggravate me enough to where I'm like, I hate people, but I always cringe if I'm in a conversation with somebody and they do this. And that's whether I'm in a conversation with them face to face, online, chat, whatever. And they'll say, well, I know such and such because I have a degree in such and such. That is actually not an accurate statement. You having a degree is not proof of what you've learned. It's not proof of what you know. It's not proof of anything other than that you went to a school and you satisfied their requirements. It's not proof of any concept. And unfortunately, beloved, that is a direct logical fallacy as an appeal to your own authority or as an appeal to your own credentials. And this is what I always tell my students is that if someone is truly credentialed in an area, they don't have to point to their credentials. They can just point to the evidence, you know. But again, like, I cringe when people do these things, but I don't necessarily hold it against them because I know these things are so a part of our socialization and the way we talk to each other. And again, I always remind people that superstition is nothing but the shortcuts that we use to get to places, and that should be the red flag. Anytime I'm trying to use a shortcut, I should be very cautious because I am robbing a person of actually understanding, and in most cases, entrapping them into a logical fallacy. No, well, trust me, I have a PhD. No, that's not how PhDs work. Nobody trusts your PhD. You got the PhD for you to learn, master, and to be able to demonstrate the information. So instead of pointing to the degree, point to the demonstration. Okay, see how that works? Um, but anyway, I don't know why I took that little rabbit trail. But the big point is, if we had some campus executives, we could have called anybody up and just said, "Hey, listen, it's going to be a hot day at the Martin household. You're up for this Sunday session. We'll be in the chat supporting, and all those great things." So that would be wonderful. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. So this is the next best thing. I decided to get up early enough to where the sun isn't directly beaming on the house yet, and the house is still somewhat cool. So I could do just a little video and just let you know where we are. We will definitely be back in effect in full next week. But I do hope this motivates somebody to say, you know what? I think I'm gonna take that step. Again, if you're a former pastor or you're a former manager in the hospitality area, um, if you had to deal with anything community leader now that is something like, I expect, this is me, okay, this is me, don't hate me, I expect you to either be qualified or to be able to qualify yourself. I have a firm belief that quality people can qualify themselves. I do believe this, and I do have years of experience in talent acquisition. See, I just did that thing that makes me cringe. I appealed. Well, that's an appeal to experience, which is still not an appeal to evidence. But either way, I have years of experience in talent acquisition, and it is one of the things that I've learned is you can find people who don't match qualifications on paper. But if they are really, and I know some people don't like the word, it is what it is for now, lack of better words, quality people can look at qualifications and qualify themselves. And at the end of the day, we can all be quality people. So it's just one of those misnomers, if you will. But I say that to say, even if you're one of those people watching and saying, well, I don't think I meet those qualifications, but you're the type of person that you've never met a challenge that you didn't like, that you can rise up to the occasion. Obviously, communication is going to have to be a strong suit. You're going to have to be able to communicate and navigate conversations because our Sunday sessions are highly engaging. They can get very tense at sometimes because we do try to create an atmosphere where people can bring themselves into the chat and be themselves into the chat. We try not to shame people for that. We try to acknowledge pretty much every chat that comes in. You will have to be a person who can manage that distraction, because some of it is going to be distracting. That's just the way that works. You will also have to be a person who can engage with people and all those good things. But again, let's say you're like, man, but you keep saying former pastor or someone in hospitality, and I don't have that experience. If you can understand the context of that experience and break the context of that experience down into achievable action steps, so it's like, oh, okay, so what would a former pastor had that qualified them for a role such as this? Primarily speaking to people, public speaking, public communication, but also organizing people, vision casting, being excited about people. Main thing, again, organizing volunteers, keeping volunteers engaged, and things of that nature. So this would have been just an ideal opportunity for one of our campus executives to take this Sunday session and just rock it the hell out and have a good time. And it would have been a great time to introduce some new faces, which is another thing that I'm really adamant about. Again, one of my big push for volunteers is not just that we want volunteers, is we want fresh faces and we want fresh ideas. um, I'm not interested in building something where everybody thinks the same things. That was church for me, and that was incredibly frustrating. It was incredibly boring for me, because what you get there um, is a lack of buy-in, a lack of accountability, a fear of conflict. And these are 3 out of 5 of the dysfunctions of a team, according to Patrick Lencioni. You know, that's what you get when you get an environment where everybody feels the need to agree with the people who started it, or the people who founded it. And that happens in a lot of church settings, especially in the urban church. Here's a rabbit trail. Now, when I say urban church, I know most people think I'm specifically talking about the black church. No, when I'm talking about the black church, I'll say black church. When I say urban church, this is another one of those things that grinds my gears. And it was actually black folk that did this after someone made a statement that their clothes weren't for urban folk. Some irresponsible people push that to the black community as urban is code for black. And of course, we definitely adopted it after that moment. But I would like to say that by far and large, urban has never been code for black. Okay. Um, Urban has been in the social encyclopedia for quite some time. And while it has been inclusive of areas where black people live, urban has typically more so dealt with um, the behavior and socialization of people who live in densely populated areas. Um, Hence, you get the term yuppie from the, I want to say, 60s, 70s, and 80s, a term that applied to people such as Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, who are obviously not black. And that term means young, urban professional, so, but anyway, but in urban churches, I don't know where I was going with that. That rabbit trail took me off. But the big point, urban, um, I don't know what the big point was there. It was going to be a good one. Maybe when I watch this back, I'll throw it in the comments if I remember. But it is heartbreaking that we're not going to be going live today. I guess we could have just went earlier, but I feel like that would have thrown some of you off guard. And just truth be told, it's so hot. I'm not going to be a nice person. Uh, I'm not going to be nice. I think my temperament is connected to my temperature. I should do some research on that. That the hotter it gets, the madder I get. Now let me stop. Definitely the less tolerant though. There are studies that show that crime does tend to increase as it gets hotter, as the temperature rises. So we're saving people from crime today by not being on here when it's completely hot. But we are looking forward to picking this conversation back up next week. And not only are we not doing Sunday sessions today, which I guess this is somewhat close to it. This is longer than I expected to do. I was only going to do a 5-minute video. But also I was supposed to be on. I was going to be on Talk Heathen today. Unfortunately, I'm having to not do that as well for the exact same reasons. Actually, I told them, I was like, it's going to be super hot, and you're probably not going to want to see me stripping on camera. And I'm gonna do what's best for me. If I'm getting hot and it's getting hot in here, I'm gonna take off all my clothes. I am getting so hot. I'm gonna take my clothes off, type of thing. Which of course I'm saying in jest. I just not come on camera. I'm not gonna do that to anybody. Nor am I gonna make put myself in that place of discomfort unnecessarily. And I know that may even sound off-putting for some people, but it's just something that I did so much as a pastor. As a pastor, we ran into emergencies. I ran into emergencies all the time, and felt the need that hey, the show must go on regardless. And I don't know if that's pastor or the fact that I was also a performer too. So it might be a combination of both, which there isn't very much difference between a pastor and a performer, other than the leadership responsibilities. But as far as the presentation, it's definitely performance and beautiful in many ways, in my humble opinion. But I would power through. I remember there were times that the lights were cut off, and I'm going to power through. I'm going to make this happen. But that was partially because I felt that the people were so broken. If they don't get this message this Sunday, somebody might go out and kill somebody. I literally felt that. And with the bunch that I pastored, it may have been true. It may have been true. We were kind of the hood church. I don't know how I became the pastor of the hood church. I mean, well, I know how. I can walk back through the timeline, but it would have never been something that I would have predicted. Yes, I grew up in the hood environment. I've been surrounded by it my entire life, but I was always not very well received by the hood environment. I remember I had some friends try to convince me to join a gang in ninth grade, and I would just be bewildered by this idea of there being a gang in Dothan, Alabama. And I couldn't get past that, even though I'd heard I heard all of them. I'm Crip, I'm Blood, I'm all this stuff, and I'm just like, huh. But we're in Dothan, and we're like 12 and 13 and shit like that, and I don't understand. Like, I didn't. But anyway, they tried to convince me to join the gang. And these were my friends, and they said, well, Darante, you should join a gang. And I'm like, well, why should I join the gang? And I was like, well, if you join the gang, if you get in a fight, we can jump in and have your back. And I was like, huh, that is very interesting. So does that mean if I get in a fight right now, you as my friends will not jump in and have my back? Yeah, bro, I'm a pass. Like, and not only did I, not join the gang, I stopped being friends with them shortly after that, because at this moment you just played your hands. You just showed me who you are. And so I've not been very well received in those regards. But I guess because of things like that, I did become very well respected, because I'm just going to be me, you know. Now so more so now than ever before. I don't know why that didn't flow out right. But yeah, today we were going to be moving on. We had talked about the dancer. We've talked about the philosopher. Who did we talk about last week? No, I think last week was the philosopher. We talked about the dancer. We talked about the conductor. We talked about the philosopher. This week we were going to talk about the gamer in a conversation called Game of Songs. And so to throw you some tidbits in here so you can be ready for next week. The gamer's focus is iteration. It's iteration. That's what we're going to be talking about a little bit next week, is breaking things down into bite-sized, achievable chunks that are a part of the long plan. One thing that helped me in my life, and I'm not, again, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Again, when I share things that I do, I'm not saying you should be doing them. I'm saying this is what I do. This is how I came to this conclusion. If this works for you, give it a try. Or just learn from the fact that somebody is experimenting with what they're doing for their personal sense of success, fulfillment, or accomplishment, and realize that you can likely experiment with yours in the same way. And please understand that, like, I don't. Other people might, but I don't believe in one size fits all of anything for that matter. And maybe having a family of six helps with that. It's hard for us to go to restaurants because we're not conformist parents, which means we're not the type of parents that say you have to eat what we eat, you have to like what we like, you have to be entertained by what we entertain by. You'd be surprised by how many parents are like that. So because we're not conformist parents, it always takes us a while to figure out where we're going to eat and what we're going to eat. And I prefer it that way. I actually get agitated if it doesn't happen that way, because I want people to understand how complex making good and beneficial decisions are. That it is very difficult for you to be able to make a decision that is beneficial for other people without including them in the conversation. So I like to try to we kind of share that with our children early so they can kind of start learning those things now, because you'd be surprised how many humans do not consider other humans that they're in relationship with. It's amazing to me. But it's because those ideas, those principles are not taught. We like to do things the easiest way possible, and so whatever's easy, whatever's convenient, that's what we're going to do. And in my humble opinion, almost every time people do that and choose that as the way to go, almost every time you're dismissing or dehumanizing somebody else. You're robbing them of the opportunity to participate in their own life. And just don't do that. But anyway, so iteration. One of the things that I came to years ago is that I separated myself from the idea of having a 5-year plan. I don't have a 5-year plan anymore. That was a big thing in high school. You gotta have a 5-year plan. You gotta know where you're gonna be 5 years from now. I'm not a fucking psychic. I don't know where I'm gonna be 5 years from now. And nor do I have enough data to get a benchmark of how I got here and to project where I could likely be. And again, this is why I often call out people just hearing something that another person says and then just popularizing it without seeing if, well, does this actually fit? So for me, it is just me, I let go of a 5-year plan and I just have life goals. I have things that I want to achieve with my life. And I have a lifetime to achieve those things, however long that may be, right? Because I have no control over that aspect for the most part. Well, I do have a limited amount of control there. I don't want to completely de-autonomize myself. But that I have life goals. I have things that I want to do with my life. By the end of my life, there are certain things that I want to be able to look back and say, I was able to accomplish that, or I was able to commit myself to that. So now an interesting byproduct of that is I no longer live my life in a rush. And I think I made a lot of bad decisions previously because I was in a rush for things to happen, or I was in a rush not to miss things, feeling like I'm racing against a time clock because God's timing was a big thing. But now things are no longer a rush for me; they're urgent. You catch the difference? Words are very similar. I'm not in a rush. Things are just urgent. Things are important. And because they're urgent, I like to handle them with care now, you know. But a part of that ended up leading me to this place where I kind of live my life in iterations. Sometimes that iteration is, that can be a week, it can be a quarter, iteration can be a year. Every year literally is an iteration for me because every year I'm going to review that previous year, what I did, what my outcomes were, what opportunities I took advantage of, what opportunities I passed on, what goals I achieved, the state of my relationships. Where are they? Why are they? What is the utility of them? Y'all know me. That's a big thing for me. I'm not saying everybody needs to be that way. Some people want friends just for friends, and that is absolutely beautiful for me. I've lived through that. That's not why I want friends now. I don't want friends just for friends. Part of the reason is because I realize I'm actually an incredibly great friend to myself. Part of the reason is because, again, as a former performer, I have a very creative and innovative mind. So if I need to talk to somebody, I can invent like 10 people to talk to at any given moment. And a part of me realizing some of the time I wasted earlier was confusing relationships or friendships just for comfort. And it's like, no, friendships can be a lot more than comfort. Friendships can be a lot more than just having somebody to vent to. And so that's when friendships became purposeful for me. So now all relationships are very, very purposeful for me. If we're in a relationship, we need to be aligned on something and working together towards and that's me. Again, I'm not saying all relationships need to be like this. I'm saying all my relationships need to be like this, which is a part of me being hyper productive. Because here's the truth of the matter. For me, if we're friends and I'm working on something and we're friends about this working on thing and we're not working on it together, I'm not really figuring out when we're gonna have time to hang out because I'm working on this. And as y'all know, I'm unapologetically hyper productive. So the type of friends I prefer are business partners or community partners. You know, those are the type of friends I prefer right now. I've had the type of friends that only existed for drinking. I've had the type of friends that only existed for hanging out. I've decided that for me, that's not the type of friends I want, or that's not the type of friendships I want, rather. Um, because I don't have that type of time. I don't have that luxury. I don't have that privilege, and I'm not that type of person. Even when I was a kid, I felt like I needed to be doing something with my time, and I've always been attracted to more productive efforts. Even and when I say productive, that doesn't excuse things that are like creative as well. Those things are productive to me as well. So I have a bunch of friends who are musical artists. They engineer music, they play music, they rap, they sing. But every time we'd get together, we'd only talk. And I'm just like, why don't we ever get together and make music? We're all musicians. We're all artists. We're all starving. We all claim we want to, you know, make the world a better place with our art. Then why every time that we're together are we not working on our art? And I begin to realize that for many people it just sounded too much like work. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, I don't mind work. I enjoy work. Work is energy applied. I don't know what life is without work. And when I say work, I'm not necessarily talking about a job. Again, work is energy applied. But I mean, as long as you live in a capitalist society, you probably gonna want to get a job. But that's a whole nother other conversation. But yeah, as y'all know, I don't think I've been shy about that. I like having people around me who are not offended by work. That's the only way I know the work is going to get done. And I know y'all have seen the monikers behind me when I record in the other room. Do the work, do it right, do your best, do the most. That's me. That's I couldn't get out the amount of content that I do if that's not something that I align myself with. I couldn't publish the amount of books that I publish if that wasn't something I aligned myself with. I could not sponsor, develop, and implement the amount of programs and projects that I develop and implement if that wasn't the thing that I do. And so like I have people kind of like, man, I would love to get as much done as you get done. And I'm like, well, and it goes back to that thing I was pointing out earlier. You say you would love to do that. Again, that I'm passionate about this. Are you really? We have to realize that we do live in a society that makes it easily to be mouth passionate. while not being mobile passionate. And I prefer people to be mobilized around their passions so they can organize around their passions, because that's the only way you're going to be able to make a difference with your passion for yourself and for others. Otherwise, it's just propaganda, you know? But yeah, so iteration, that's going to be the conversation of next week. It's going to be called Game of Songs. So we're going to be talking about living iteratively and, going with this musical type of theme we've been using for this Please Don't Stop the Music conversation. And we're going to be talking about like kind of the soundtrack of your life. Because, in the first episode of this particular conversation, we talked about this idea of the flow of information into your life and about how when a dancer has an important performance or an important engagement, they will literally change the flow of all information in their life to feed them for that performance. And when we talk about information here, we're not just talking about the flow of data, but we're literally talking about how they engage with the whole world around them, not just turning off the TV, but changing what they eat, changing how they spend their time, changing their conversations, changing who they spend their time with just for this limited amount of time so they can get the best out of performance, get the best out of their performance. And so you can imagine that's almost like shifting into a different gear for life. And we've all done it, whether we've done it in high school, in college, or in our careers or with our families. There's been something that has happened that has forced you to kind of shift gears, that has forced you to kind of like, nope, this is so important to me that I'm going to do more than I've ever done before. And I'm starting here. Then, and there's an outcome that I want to get to. I call that, the mastermind effect. There is something that happens that pulls out the mastermind in us. And what I like to teach people is how to tap into that, how to understand that thing doesn't have to be triggered. That's you. You don't have to trigger that. That the you that was able to decide that this whatever thing was so important that it was able to shift you into another gear. You can kind of master yourself, because that's about the only thing you can do. But you can about master yourself in such a way that you can turn that on with a light switch and turn it off whenever you want to, But when you do that, I want you to kind of think of that in a way of like a soundtrack, because a part of how we do that is changing the song, changing the soundtrack. You know, some of us have been living like with like a Jaws soundtrack, da dum, da dum, like every step you make, da da dum. Some of us been living with a Batman soundtrack, da na 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 Batman. All this stuff. But either way, some of us living with a Jay-Z and Rick Ross soundtrack. I'm not gonna do it, but um, but the point is, like, as a person who enjoys viewing the sociological nuances of life, for different periods of your life, it's like you can almost assign songs to that. In this period of my life, these were the songs that kind of described where I was, or how I felt, what I was going for, maybe, big point is soundtrack. And so I kind of treat my iterations like that. Like, okay, I'm in a different iteration. What's the soundtrack for this iteration? What's the music? What's feeding me here? And again, soundtrack here is bigger than music because it's about the flow of information. So it's, what am I watching during this iteration? What am I reading during this iteration? What am I exposing myself to? Are there any new conferences, any new seminars that I need to be getting in on? Are there any new voices that I've not heard of that I need to be considering what they're saying? What's the new soundtrack for this iteration? So that's going to be next week's conversation. I did not expect this conversation to go this long. There was just no way in hell I was going to let a Sunday go by without saying something or without having somebody up here. And again, once we have campus executives, things will flow a little smoother. Not even just when we have emergencies, but the whole point is to have people. That's that big point from earlier, is to have multiple faces, multiple voices, and multiple ideas reflected on Sunday sessions. Sunday sessions. BridgeCity Global, while yes, it is definitely a vision that flows from me, it's a vision that is for community. And therefore, the voices that are attached to it should represent that. And as long as you're hearing, me and my wife every Sunday, you're going to learn a lot about what we believe about community and what we think about community and what we think can be helpful for community. But that's not how you build healthy community. We've got to get multiple faces, multiple races, multiple ethnicities, multiple nationalities, multiple genders. We've got to get multiple voices um, into these conversations. If Bridge City and the Bridge is to become what I hope it to become. And that's something that truly represents the needs of people. I don't know if you've noticed, but something that I am fiercely resistant against, and well, I'm sure you've noticed in Sunday sessions, is I don't attach myself to political labels. Um, I don't necessarily consider myself apolitical, um, but I don't attach myself to a lot of political labels. And the reason I don't is because I exist for people, not just liberal people, not conservative people, not blue people, not red people, not even just atheist. You know, I exist. My passion is people, not my type of people. My passion is people, not the people who agree with me. My passion is people. So because of that, I like to remain as somewhat as the moderator. And just to be frankly clear, I have different standards. And I won't apologize for my standards. They have been heavily informed, and I understand that I have the flexibility to update them with new information. And as of now, I'm not getting any new information that causes me to change my mind. And my mind is that I don't like the standards of politics. Not in this country, not what they've been for a long time. I'm excited that I can't use the word excited. That would be dishonest. I'm um I'm hopeful. I can't even say that. That's just me. That's literally me saying what I know that many of you feel. And that's one of the things um that you kind of pick up from being a pastor is becoming not really a thermostat, but a thermometer of the people and kind of understanding what people feel. But I don't necessarily share in that hope, nor do I share in the doom and gloom aspect. Um, I find both sides to be somewhat unrealistic and inattentive to the realities. I don't like politics that force our attention on personalities more than policies. I don't like politics that drive our attention more so to parties than people. Because what we tend to do is create new reasons to dehumanize the other person or the other people who attach to that personality based off of information that you know about the personality or the party, but not the people. And for me, that's a slippery slope. And it's also recognizing that other people aren't going to agree with you about how life should be. And what I find very disconcerting is that the two main parties in this country are literally yelling at each other, you do things my way or you're evil. I don't find that healthy. I don't find that healthy. And I have a lot of thoughts on these things, but I will reserve these thoughts. I do my best not to try to spend too much time talking about things that I can't impact directly or indirectly, impact or influence. Not saying that I don't have the potential to impact these things. I'm saying I don't have the current capacity um, to impact these things in any significant way. But you best believe I'm working to get there. I damn sure am. Because as I stated earlier, I don't have a 5-year plan, but I do have life goals. I have things that I want to achieve and that I would like to see happen before the end of my life. All right. I have talked too long and the temperature is rising. Didn't mean to quote an R. Kelly song there. Sorry if anybody that triggered anybody. I was a big R. Kelly fan, by the way. But I'm a different type of fan. I was one of those fans that I like your music. I don't know you. Like, oh man. And like I literally would tell people, like, I don't know these people. Man, he didn't do this, or he did this. I don't know anything. Because me seeing somebody on television, me hearing somebody say somebody did something on television is not an appropriate way of knowing. I think that's one thing that we've forgotten in this country. I'm not saying there's not people who do know. I'm saying nothing about me watching anything on television, even if it has the word news in it, is actually an appropriate way of knowing. It is information for sure, but the onus is still on me to verify the information. And that is still even if this information is somehow appropriate for me. And so, and a lot of people tried to pull me into the conversation, which I think I did get involved with the conversation one time and immediately felt sick afterwards because it just felt like a waste of my time. Why am I discussing this? This is literally like I don't listen to the radio. I listen to music, but I do not listen to the radio. And I stopped listening to the radio, and somebody might get mad to me about this because I stopped, and this was radio stations that are targeted towards my community are, you know, the news on these radio stations were just fucking gossip. That's it. Guess who's having a baby? Guess who's getting married? Guess who got kicked out of the house? And I'm like, holy fucking crap. And then, of course, the music was just antiquated and kind of going to next week's conversation. It wasn't, I'm very intentional about the soundtrack of my life now. And I didn't like the soundtrack that I was hearing on many radio stations. And so I was just like, nope, these are not the things I want to be thinking about. And so most times, I actually, when I'm in my truck, I cut the radio off so that I can think, so that I can process, so that I can work on whatever the hell I got working on. All right, so I got to go. I did not mean to go this long, but I did want to drop in today and let you know what was going on. We will definitely be back next Sunday. I'll probably be a little slow getting content out this week. And I can probably get some done early in the mornings. But until Tuesday or Wednesday, which is hopefully when we'll have the air fixed, I'll be a little handicapped as far as recording. But we will definitely be back next Sunday for Sunday sessions, and we'll be picking up this conversation with Game of Songs. And then also next Sunday is the first Sunday in August. So you know what that means. Ex-Pastor Call-In show, baby. It's going to be amazing. Our first show was, just overwhelmingly incredible. I couldn't be more excited. So I'm super duper excited that Kyle, a good friend, ex-Pastor Kyle Butler, will be joining me. And look, don't tell him I said this, but Kyle is definitely somebody that I'm trying to recruit to the Bridge team because, man, He has a beautiful heart, a beautiful presentation, and truly seems to love people. And if you know anything about the bridge and Bridge City, for us, it's the people, stupid. So until next time, I love y'all so much. Keep rising, be the bridge. I'll holler at you later.